The Christmas candles is a fairly straightforward pop-up to cut out, but a little bit tricky when it comes to the folding. So again, I suggest that you print out the full colour sheet here so you can see where the guidelines are for both the folding and for the cutting as well, and just keep referring back to those. And of course we've got a picture here just to show you how to make it up, and that I think will just help when it comes to the folding as well. So the next thing to do is actually to cut it, and underneath I've printed out onto my card, and I'm just ready now to cut this out. Okay, everything's now cut out, and so the next thing to do is to put in the score lines. A few things to note here, that I'm going to start with the centre one, but we do have areas here on the leaves which we want to have remaining coming out, and so they don't get scored, so it's worth just working up to that point, popping that one in there, and then coming back all the way up to here and then on the other side of the candle. So this is perhaps the trickiest one, so I would just work on that in sections one at a time so you don't go over something that you shouldn't, and just pick up on that using the back of the craft knife. And then you can see, in fact I'm going to do this one by hand. Let's just pop the ruler on, let's guide it, and then we've got the final one here. It's not the end of the world if you do go over those, it's just it makes them a little bit limp and they don't have quite the same spring or panaz as we would really like. Okay, that's perhaps the trickiest of them and the one to look out for. The rest are nice and straightforward, so I'll go on now and just put the rest of the score lines onto here. My score lines are now all done. I've just gone through and done that. So a quick check to make sure that the elements appear to all be free and cut out, and we haven't left anything out. There's always one or two that decide to want to catch, but it looks okay for the moment. So the first thing to do, I always start off with the centre line. It's going to be our main fold. This is a little bit like the snowflake. There's a lot of bits that will sort of be getting in your way, but if we just hold it between your finger and thumb like this, begin to crease it, and then turn it over, you can put a nice little bit of pinch on there, and that just starts the main fold off. Don't worry about these other elements just yet. Okay, so that's that part in there, and now we have two mountain folds rather here. I've got to get the candle in. So again, can you see what I'm doing? Just squeezing that. If we allow that just to come out through there for the moment, and there's a mountain fold here. I'm going to just pop my finger in, if you can see that, just popping it in behind and just squeezing that, using that really as a tool really, just to enable me to get to there. Pull this out. And this really is the trickiest part. You've probably gathered these are, they're fairly simple to make out and they're fairly simple to make, but it's the folding where, if there are any problems, this is where it is, but that's half the fun of making it. So we can see the basic shape forming there now, and that's all really doing what it should do. I'll just ease that one out there so it's going to come out in the right direction, and put a little bit more squeeze on that candle, and just work from one end. So I'm going to work from this one here now, just check all my elements are free, and as I pull up onto this section here, I can just begin to pull that out. We can see that it forms the shapes on the valley folds there. Turning it over, you can see, just put a pinch where we need to put a crease in, and so sometimes working from the back of it is quite useful. Again, a pinch in there, and you can see now that's forming that part. That's coming up nicely. Grab hold of that leaf, anchor it down there, and I can just begin to tease now these other elements out. So squeeze there, a little bit hard to see. If I can hold that up to the camera for you, and then just pop that bit there. That's a nice squeeze on there, and while I'm here I can see that line there, so I will just pop that over, make sure it's free, and again just begin to help it on its way. I'm going to pop my ruler in here. So I'm just going to put my ruler in here now, and just use that as a guide just to help it on its way, and then come back this side and give it a nice little squeeze there. That really helps define the fold lines. If I turn it on its side here, we can see as I move it over, the score lines are beginning to take shape, and then the actual folds and the way that it's working is beginning to happen for me there. So that half is pretty good. So I'm just going to flip it over now and do the same over here. So it really is just more of the same. I find it easier to take hold of that part and just begin to pull it. It defines the other shapes there. Pop that in there. Squeeze there. Pull that one down. Can you see that? I'm just going to pull it down and then just put my thumb on that. That I will flip over and just squeeze the back part there, because that's the way that the folds work. We can see that there's one in there, so a little bit of squeeze, take it over, and again just a nice pinch just to begin to get it on its way. At this point, up comes the candle there, pop it down, and I don't think we go too far wrong by just placing our ruler in there and just bending that over just to help it on its way. And last but not least is this little bit of candle here on that section, which is going to give us our other score lines, and then we have one on the holly there as well. So if I can just turn that over and show you now, we can see the basic shape, it's there, it's come together. So really the hard part now is getting this to fold properly and make sure everything works as it should do. So I will work it at 90 degrees on here and just pull it over and just gently pull these items, these sections down, and fold that. And I think that half is pretty good. In fact, the whole thing's just going over quite nicely, but I would just like to check on this side that it's doing everything that it should do as well. Those crease lines are working. There's a lot of cuts and folds in here, and as you can see, as I concertina and push it up, it's trying to come apart. Now, you could just push it down there, but before I do that, I'm going to hold it like this and have a look and see that there's nothing untoward happening, that everything is folding where it should, so that when I do eventually squeeze it, that those fold lines go in the right place. I said it's quite a tricky one, this one. There's a lot happening to it. So there we go, down that goes, out with a piece of paper, and just commit myself now to these folds. I like to do it by hand first of all, just so you can feel what's going on in there. Rub it down, pull it across, over with the ruler now. That will just define nicely all the creases in there. Turn it over, and there we go, that's our candle one. Just make sure that it's working properly. It should close, open and close quite nicely. Remember that they're at the best when they're at a sort of about 45-degree angle like that. But there we go, that's a little bit tricky, that one. But it's only in the folding. The cutting out and everything is relatively simple. And as you see, if you take your time, it really does work quite nicely. And I think that looks quite spectacular. Watch out for these leaves. Can you see it just catching there? They are a little bit spiky, but they do kind of find their own way. And that one's just going there, so if that happens, you just give a little bit of twist or move that, and I think you'll find then as it opens and closes, it should sort of free itself off. So a couple of sort of test runs, just make sure that everything's working fine. And there we go, that's the finished Christmas candles.